So John Kirby, right now the Pentagon spokesman. John, good to have you. We're getting word, John, and I don't know if there's any substance to it, that Russia's defense ministry has seized some portable surface-to-air missile systems being supplied to Ukraine. We don't know much more than that. This is coming from Russia's defense ministry. Do you know anything about it?
No, Neil, I have not seen that report. Certainly couldn't corroborate it on our end.
So this idea that the Russian soldiers are sort of being moved around, reports at Western Ukraine, other points, is it just a sense to confuse the Ukrainians, to confuse us?
Well, I think in terms of Western Ukraine, we did see them conduct a couple of long-range airstrikes on a couple of airfields in Western Ukraine, which is a little unusual, Neil. They haven't seen much military activity out in that part of the country. By and large, though, in terms of ground forces, they are all really located in the eastern half of the country, in the south coming up from Crimea, and of course in the north and northeast heading towards Kyiv. We do assess that they have made progress in the last 24 hours in getting closer to Kyiv, and some of those advanced elements over by the airport to the northwest of the city did move a little bit further down the road, and they are being now backed up by some follow-on forces that are sort of filling into their spots. So they are making some progress. Clearly, you can see it for yourself, that the shelling and the bombardment of Kyiv now continues at an increased pace.
At the pace they're going, there have been some estimates that within 48 hours they could be in Kyiv. You know if that's the case?
I think we need to be really careful predicting. And I associate myself with what President Zelensky said, that the Ukrainians are going to fight, and they are fighting for Kyiv. They're fighting all around the country. They're going to put up a stiff resistance. And I think if anybody can say with certainty, or feels like they can, that by a certain day or certain hour the Russians are going to be in there and have it, I would take that with a huge grain of salt, because the Ukrainians are putting up a very stiff resistance. This has not gone on the schedule and the plan that the Russians originally had.
Well, you're right about that. In the last 16 days, prove it. John, if I can get a sense, because we've talked to a number of Ukrainian parliament members who haven't given up, and I guess neither has President Zelensky, and the idea of air support or to get something going on this no-fly zone. And I just wonder what our parameters are on this. We thought it was a bad idea using the MiGs and ourselves playing a role of, using U.S. Air Force Base in Germany. I get that. But if they found a way to get those MiGs, the Poles get the MiGs to them their own way, what is our position on that?
We've said all along, Neil, from the beginning, that these are sovereign decisions that nation-states have to make for themselves. And if that was something that any other nation wanted to work out with Ukraine, the delivery of aircraft, we certainly would respect that sovereign space. What we were opposed to was having the aircraft transferred to us for then transfer back into Ukraine. And again, I think when you look at the air picture, let's take a step back from just the MiG conversation and look at the air picture. It's contested airspace over Ukraine. Yes, the Russians are flying a lot more sorties, and yes, they've got full surface-air missile coverage over much of the country, but the Ukrainians are not defenseless. They have been contesting this airspace quite well, quite effectively, quite nimbly, with the surface-air missile systems that they have, with the drones that they have, and with other opportunities, including their own fixed-wing aircraft. So, I mean, they are fighting hard for the airspace. We believe we're focused on making sure that they're getting the kinds of capabilities and weapons that they need most, and that they're using very effectively. In the report before you came to me, we talked about this convoy, and your reporter was talking about, some of the anti-armor weapon systems that the Ukrainians are using very effectively against Russian tanks and armored vehicles. That kind of support continues to flow, not just from the United States, but from 14 other nations.
John, if the Russians end up using chemical weapons, which they say they will not, they say that's just a plant from the West to make them look bad. But if they do, does that change everything? Would NATO get involved if they started doing that?
I don't want to get ahead in hypotheticals here, Neil. You heard the president say himself that when he was asked this question, he said that there would be severe consequences for Russia should they do that. I don't want to get out ahead of us on this.
What are severe consequences? I know you can't characterize that, but severe consequences seem to be upping the ante beyond the substantial sanctions and actions and shipment of weapons we already have, right?
Yeah, look, nobody wants it to escalate, though, Neil, and it doesn't have to. This is a war of choice that Mr. Putin can end right now if he chose a diplomatic path forward. Nobody wants to see this get more violent. Nobody wants to see anybody else have to flee or be killed or wounded by this unprovoked aggression from Russia. It can end today. It doesn't have to get escalated in the chemical, biological realm. Now, again, I don't want to get ahead of where we are right now, but I think we can all understand that an escalated conflict on any level is not only not good for our national security and the people of Europe, it's not good for the people of Ukraine.
So maybe you can help me get a sense of where we stand right now. We're getting mixed signals, certainly out of Vladimir Putin. That's probably an understatement, talking this morning about positive developments. At the same time, he's expanding his airstrikes across the country, and
Right.
he's calling, and taking troops from the Middle East, bringing them to the Ukraine, a worldwide call for volunteers to fight the good fight. So he seems to be widening his role and involvement here. Should we?
What I think we're seeing him do is intensify his military attacks. As he has become frustrated in not making the progress he wanted to make, here we are on day 16, and he really doesn't have any population centers under his control, with the exception of a couple in the south. He has intensified air attacks, airstrikes, bombardment, missile strikes, and that becomes more indiscriminate going forward. That's why we're seeing more damage to civilian infrastructure, an attack on a hospital in Mariupol, and other civilian damage as well as civilian casualties. He has intensified because of this frustration, we believe. And so he's not leaving a lot of room open, for diplomacy. They announced some humanitarian corridors and then, frankly, just went and violated them, killing people as they were trying to escape. And so we haven't seen any sincerity by Mr. Putin or the Russians to really be serious about a negotiated settlement. But that is still an option available to him. And obviously, we urge him to take that.
What do you think of China? And it's saying very little on this. Chinese Premier Li Keqiang had said that this is a grave situation. That's about as far as he has gone. So I'm just wondering if things escalate to the point they are, clearly on the part of Putin's role, are we considering, I know this isn't the Pentagon area, but sanctions or the rest that should go to China, or in some way working on them to get him to sort of, climb off the ledge?
Look, I would quibble a little bit with you, Neil, when you said they haven't said much. I would disagree. They have had multiple opportunities, and they have taken them to call out countries for implementing sanctions on Russia, saying it's unlawful, that they wouldn't support it. They've said that they want to support a diplomatic solution, but they've done practically nothing. They blamed the United States for a bioweapons program in Ukraine.
So what are we going to
exist.
do in response? No, you're right about that. What are we going to do in response?
Again, there's no reason to escalate this beyond this, but we would urge China to take the role of any other responsible major power in the world and make consequences, on Russia. Put sanctions in place, implement them, and to show some leadership here, rather than spouting Russian disinformation
What are our
and
options?
propaganda.
What are our options, John, if they don't do that? Because to your point, they're not.
Our options, with respect right now to China, are going to be diplomatic, and I think that's where they need to be.
All right. I want to thank you very much, John Kirby. Thank you on all of that.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.